Hi, my name is Soliday, and today I'll be talking about Chapter 12 of the book, which is called Sensitivity in Social Media, the Cause of the Student Death. So the chapter starts off by talking about like a student editor of the Johnsonian or the Johnsonian, and they're like a school newspaper article or newspaper team who works for a certain university, and they learn a valuable lesson about reporting about death and a person's death that has circulated through social media. So it starts off with a girl named Parrish, who is the editor in chief of the newspaper, the article, and she gets a call from her editing manager saying that she found out that a girl named Abby Carroll has died, and they don't really know how yet. They just know that it has happened, and so they want to find more information about this. So the two editors, the editor in chief and the editing manager, discuss how they could get more information about this. They kind of disagreed with each other and didn't really communicate properly, but Parrish told her to find more information and see what all she can get online, even though that she knew that not everything online was valuable, but I guess her editing manager didn't do it correctly. So she went under the name as the Johnsonian and posted on social media saying that they heard about the death of Abby Carroll and was wondering if anybody had any more information about it. And doing it like this, it's kind of, it made it seem really like serious and that they just didn't care at the time about, who has or who hasn't heard about it. And they decided to crowd surf like that, and post it on Facebook and Twitter, and eventually blew up negatively. A lot of people were mad and putting in comments and letting them know that this was not ethical at all, that that they shouldn't have posted this, they should go ahead and delete it. The friends and family who are close might have not even heard about it yet because they got the information kind of late, so there wasn't too many things about it. That's why they were trying to figure the information out, and what they had posted was not a very good or smart choice. And then after that, Parrish later heard about it from calls about what has happened and what was posted on the Johnsonian. And after a while, she eventually, deleted the post, had a talk with the editing manager, and she was really wondering about what to do. So she talked to one of her advisors, and their advisor said there was no need for apologizing because the damage has been dealt, and that she just kind of needs to go and see what all she can do and how to fix things. And this was new for Parrish because Parrish has never, she never has done a story about a death, and they figured that one of the causes was suicide. So she said that it was a very hard case because it was somebody that she knew, and it was suicide. So it was a very hard case to discuss. But even so, the people who were close didn't really want to talk about it, which are called mourners. They were people who could talk about it, but nobody ever came out, especially with all the backlash of the post. People were kind of scared. But Parrish, she couldn't talk to anybody that was close, but she did go to like the dean of students and the vice president of student affairs, and she talked to them, and it wasn't like official things, but she needed quotes, but it wasn't official. I say that officially talk about the death, but they just said things here and there that she could possibly use because they were scared of like what all backlash they might get from all the people who really enjoyed Abby Carroll as a person. And the Johnsonian and the newspaper team couldn't really get anything official off there because there was no sources informed anybody, so they couldn't post or they couldn't write about it because there was no sources on it because people were scared from from their very first post on social media. So people were scared to release anything or say anything about it because they didn't want all the hate and what all had happened to them, they don't want to happen to themselves. And eventually, over time, they didn't want to drag out the story for weeks talking about just the death. And then it wasn't until about a year later where they officially released the Johnsonian, or the actual newspaper team, the student newspaper, officially released an article about her death, and it was involved families and friends and close ones, and it talked about the suicide walk. It talked about things that they enjoyed about Abby, because Abby was a well-known person, was in many students and organization groups, and was just an overall good person at the college, and a good person in general. So obviously a lot of people knew her and enjoyed her. And they didn't talk about that until a year later, because, it gave the mourners plenty of time, and they just didn't know how well they should actually cover the death. They didn't want to drag it out, but they also eventually wanted to report it, and they did. And the aftermath of it was Parrish eventually talked to her team, and she talked to her editing manager, and, she deranked her down to just a person who writes stories, because she knew that she was in the wrong, and, it wasn't enough to fire her, but it was enough to demote her and have her, in a different category, because she never wanted, she doesn't want nothing like that to ever happen again. And she talked to her team, and her team can go to workshops, and they talk about, crowd surfing, what to put on the internet, what not to put on the internet, and just overall ethical things that you should or shouldn't do. And I kind of agree with that aftermath. Talking about the chapter now, I believe that they definitely, crowd surfing is good, but they said that, they should have not posted like just online like that about, the death and, any information about it. They talked about that they should have contacted people who knew about it privately and asked them what all had happened and what all, they think and have any information on her, instead of just, putting it in everybody's face like that. And I believe that's something they definitely should have done. They should have privately contacted, family or friends, or just people who released the information, not even family or friends. And they should have waited until, people have been contacted, a couple days later, they should have waited until close personal people have been contacted, and then from there they could have done with the story, whether they would have reported it or would have had mourners report it and kind of give them quotes and stuff. And I believe that when it comes to social media and deaths, that is in general just a scary thing, because a lot of them are hoax, a lot of them are fakes, a lot of them haven't either like passed or just happened like 2 minutes ago. So it's very, deaths and social media is a very, very weird thing, and it can be very untrustworthy, and it's not the best trustworthy thing as a source. So you should definitely have private information, and you should figure out more and more about the case before you just, blur it out. I believe that it's a very unethical thing to do. They should have waited. Paris should have contacted and communicated better with her editing manager on how to figure out information, since the editing manager didn't know that was an unethical thing to do. She should have communicated a lot better, or even put the story in her own hands to make sure that nothing that bad has happened. They should have contacted and done through a team on whether they should actually post this or not. And the aftermath of it, Paris eventually just did the social media sites could only be ran by her and the multimedia manager. And then if you have any information stores, that they had to go through them and then see if they could post it. And that's definitely a good source. It's definitely a good way to stop anything like that happening again. Unethical, deaths and mourners and contacting the family is always a terrible thing, because they never give them enough time when they should. I believe that this is definitely a good way to figure out how to work with deaths and how you should source it and how you report it. It gave you a wrong way, and eventually in the chapter they kind of told you how to eventually start doing it right, but it was too late for them already. They just received so much backlash. So overall, this was very unethical from the beginning about the editing manager, even though she eventually got demoted, and how to work with deaths. And I believe that you should work with deaths very, very slowly and very safely, and you should figure out information slowly over time from those who are reporting it or have any information. And then once everything seems kind of clear and at least eased a little bit, then you kind of release it out like this. I believe that's how you should do that, at least. But overall, sensitivity in social media, it's two things that you just have to work with very, very carefully, and you should make sure to communicate well with your team. And overall, this was pretty informing. This was definitely informing, especially if you're going into this kind of job. It tells you a little bit on how to report stuff like this. And that's all I got. Peace.